Before the stadium lights, before the screaming fans, before her name echoed across the world, there was just a girl with curly hair, bright eyes, and a notebook filled with words no one else had heard. Taylor Allison Swift was born on a cold December day in 1989, in Reading, Pennsylvania. Her family lived on a Christmas tree farm, surrounded by open land, quiet mornings, and the gentle sound of wind moving through tall trees. It was a peaceful place, but even as a child, Taylor felt something stirring inside her. She didn't know the word for it yet. She only knew she wanted to tell stories. As a young girl, Taylor loved music deeply. She listened carefully to every song on the radio, memorizing lyrics and melodies. But she didn't just listen, she imagined herself inside the songs. She wondered how they were written, how words could hold so much feeling. While other children played games, Taylor often sat alone, writing poems and short stories. Writing was her safe place. It was where she made sense of the world. Her grandmother, a professional opera singer, was one of the first people to notice her talent. She encouraged Taylor to sing and perform, planting a small seed of belief in her heart. Taylor began joining local talent shows and events. Sometimes she won, sometimes she didn't, but she always walked away learning something new. Still, the road was not easy. At school, Taylor felt different. She was quiet, sensitive, and often misunderstood. Some classmates teased her for liking country music or for carrying notebooks instead of toys. Those moments hurt deeply, but instead of breaking her, they gave her something powerful stories to write. Every feeling, every disappointment, every small heartbreak found its way onto the page. When Taylor was around 10 years old, she discovered country music. Artists like Shania Twain and Faith Hill spoke directly to her heart. Their songs felt honest, emotional, and real. Taylor knew instantly this was her sound. Country music told stories, and that was what she loved most. She begged her parents for a guitar. When she finally got one, she held it awkwardly at first, her fingers sore and clumsy. But she practiced every day. Hours passed without her noticing. She learned chords, strummed melodies, and slowly began writing her own songs. They weren't perfect, but they were hers. Each song carried a piece of her life school struggles, dreams, fears, and hopes. Her parents saw how serious she was. This wasn't a phase. This was a calling. Taylor's mother, Andrea, drove her to auditions and performances, sometimes hours away. Taylor sang at local fairs, small cafes, and community events. Often, people talked over her music. Sometimes only a few listened. But Taylor sang anyway. She sang like every performance mattered, because to her, it did. One day, Taylor learned something that changed everything. Most country music record labels were based in Nashville, Tennessee. From that moment on, Nashville became more than a place, it became a dream. Taylor begged her parents to take her there. On family trips, she handed out demo CDs to anyone who would take them. Many were ignored. Some were politely declined. Others were never listened to at all. Rejection became familiar. But Taylor refused to stop. At just 11 years old, she sang the American national anthem at a basketball game. Her voice shook, but she finished strong. Each small moment built her confidence, piece by piece. Each no only made her want to try harder. When she was 13, her family made a life-changing decision. They moved to Nashville. It was a huge risk, leaving their home, their comfort, and everything familiar for a dream that might never come true. But her parents believed in her, and Taylor believed in herself, even when doubt whispered in the quiet moments. In Nashville, Taylor was just another hopeful artist, another young girl with a guitar, another dreamer knocking on closed doors. But what made her different was simple. She didn't just want to be famous. She wanted to be heard. And this was only the beginning. Nashville was louder than Taylor expected. Music floated through the air, everywhere through open cafe doors, from cars stopped at traffic lights, and from small bars that lined the streets. For most people, it was exciting. For Taylor, it was intimidating. This was the heart of country music, and she was only a teenager with a guitar and a dream that felt fragile in her hands. Every morning, Taylor woke up early. She went to school like a normal teenager, but her afternoons were different. While others rushed home to relax, Taylor headed to songwriting sessions, auditions, and meetings. Her backpack was always heavy with school books on one side and music notebooks on the other. She began knocking on doors. Record labels, managers, producers. Most doors did not open. Some people smiled politely and told her she was talented but too young. Others said her voice was nice but not special enough. A few didn't even listen to her full song before saying no. Each rejection stung, even when she pretended it didn't. At night, Taylor sat on her bed and wrote. She wrote about disappointment, about feeling invisible, about believing in something when no one else seemed to. Writing helped her breathe again. It reminded her why she started in the first place. She wasn't chasing approval. She was chasing truth. Taylor quickly learned something important in Nashville. Many songwriters didn't sing their own songs. They wrote for other artists. But Taylor wanted something different. She didn't want her stories to belong to someone else. She wanted to sing her own words, to tell her own life through music. So she kept writing. She wrote in her bedroom, on the floor, leaning against her bed. She wrote in the car, humming melodies into a small recorder. She wrote between classes, during lunch breaks, and late at night when the house was quiet. Songs poured out of her honest, emotional, and deeply personal. Some adults didn't understand. They told her she should write more grown-up songs. That teenagers didn't have enough life experience to say anything meaningful. Taylor listened respectfully, but inside, she disagreed. Her feelings were real. Her stories mattered, and she trusted that. One afternoon, Taylor met someone who saw something different in her. His name was Scott Borchetta. He wasn't just listening to her voice. He was listening to her words. He noticed how she wrote her own songs, how she spoke with confidence about her vision, how she understood exactly who she was as an artist even at such a young age. Still, nothing happened right away. Taylor continued performing anywhere she could. She played at small events, songwriter nights, and even in parking lots. Sometimes she sang to crowds that barely noticed her. But once in a while, someone would stop, listen, and feel something. Those moments kept her going. At school, life wasn't easy either. Taylor was still a teenager, still learning who she was. She felt lonely at times. She missed her old home. She missed being just a kid. But she carried her guitar like a shield. Music was the one place where she felt completely understood. Her mother watched quietly from the side, proud but worried. This journey was demanding. There were no guarantees. Just long hours, tired eyes, and hope held together by determination. One evening, after another long day, Taylor sat with her guitar and played a new song she had written. It was about believing in yourself when no one else does. About standing alone in a room full of doubt. As she sang, something shifted. She wasn't just practicing anymore. She was becoming. Slowly, people began to notice her work ethic, her honesty, her refusal to give up. In an industry filled with shortcuts, Taylor chose the long road. She chose patience. She chose growth. And then, finally, one door didn't close. Scott Borchetta was starting a new record label, Big Machine Records. He needed an artist who could grow with the label. Someone authentic. Someone fearless enough to build something from the ground up. He thought of Taylor. When he offered her a record deal, Taylor was just 15 years old. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She smiled quietly, because deep down, she knew this wasn't luck. This was years of believing when no one was watching. And the real work was just beginning. Signing with Big Machine Records didn't mean instant success. There were no flashing cameras. No red carpets. No crowds chanting her name. What Taylor received instead was something far more important to chance. A blank page. an open door to become who she truly was meant to be. Taylor was 15, young and hopeful, but also aware of how much she still needed to learn. In the recording studio, everything felt new. The microphones looked intimidating. The headphones felt heavy on her ears. Sometimes, when she heard her own voice played back, she cringed. It sounded different from how it felt inside her head. But she didn't run from it. She leaned in. She practiced again and again. Taylor worked closely with songwriters and producers, but she insisted on one thing: her songs had to be honest. She didn't want polished lies or borrowed emotions. She wanted truth, even if it sounded imperfect. Especially if it sounded imperfect. Some people doubted her approach. They questioned whether such personal songs would connect with anyone else. They wondered if listeners would care about the diary of a teenage girl. But Taylor believed that honesty had power. If her feelings were real, then someone out there would feel them too. She kept writing. She wrote about first crushes, about quiet heartbreaks, about feeling unseen and hopeful at the same time. She wrote about small-town dreams and big emotions that felt too heavy for a young heart to carry alone. Her songs weren't loud. They were gentle, vulnerable, and brave. At the same time, Taylor began performing constantly. She toured radio stations, sang at tiny venues, and played acoustic sets for audiences who had never heard her name before. Sometimes she sang for just a handful of people. Sometimes she sang for no one at all. But she treated every performance like it mattered. Because to her, it did. Her parents remained her strongest support. They traveled with her, encouraged her, and reminded her to rest when she forgot to. Taylor was growing fast, not just as an artist, but as a person. She learned how to handle rejection with grace, how to speak up for herself, and how to stay kind in a world that often wasn't. School became harder to balance with her rising responsibilities. Taylor studied on the road, doing homework in cars and backstage rooms. She missed school events, parties, and ordinary teenage moments. Sometimes, she wondered what life would have been like if she had chosen an easier path. But then she would pick up her guitar, and the doubt would fade. One day, Taylor released her first single. It wasn't an explosion. It didn't change everything overnight, but it was a beginning. Her song played on the radio, quietly at first. She sat in the car, listening to her own voice come through the speakers, heart pounding. It felt unreal. The girl who once handed out CDs in parking lots was now being heard little by little. Listeners began to write letters. They said her songs felt like their own stories, that her words understood them, that her music made them feel less alone. Each message meant everything to her. This was what she had dreamed of: not fame, but connection. Taylor didn't chase trends. She stayed true to her sound, her storytelling, and her values. While others tried to fit into what was popular, Taylor focused on being real. She believed that if she stayed honest, the right audience would find her. Still, the pressure was growing. People watched her closely now. Some praised her. Others criticized her youth, her voice, her writing. But Taylor learned to let the noise pass by. She knew who she was, and more importantly, she knew who she wasn't. She wasn't a product. She was a storyteller. Late at night, alone in her room, Taylor wrote one song after another. Some would never be released. Some would change her life. But each one shaped her, strengthening her voice and sharpening her purpose. She was no longer just a girl with a guitar. She was becoming an artist. And the world was slowly beginning to listen. Taylor's first album wasn't just a collection of songs. It was her life, her heart, and her experiences poured into melodies that carried more weight than any award or headline ever could. She was still a teenager, but the emotions she captured in her music were timeless: fear, hope, love, and heartbreak woven together with honesty that could only come from someone who had lived through it all in her own quiet, sensitive way. In the studio, Taylor was meticulous. She spent hours perfecting each note, adjusting lyrics until they sounded exactly as she felt them. Producers and songwriters admired her dedication, but sometimes worried she was too young to handle such pressure. Taylor didn't care. She wanted her music to mean something, not just fill the charts. When her debut single began to get airplay on local radio stations, Taylor's heart raced. Every time she heard her voice, she remembered the long nights in her bedroom, scribbling lyrics by candlelight. The small-town girl from Pennsylvania was slowly stepping into the world she had dreamed of, one song at a time. Yet, with early recognition came new challenges. Critics sometimes dismissed her work, calling her just a teenager or questioning whether her emotions were mature enough for mainstream country music. Some radio stations hesitated to play her songs, unsure if the audience would relate. Taylor faced a world that often tried to box her in before she even had a chance to grow, but she refused to let others define her. She reminded herself that her music was her truth, and truth had its own power. Meanwhile, Taylor's live performances became the backbone of her career. Small venues transformed into packed shows as more and more people came to hear her sing. Her fans weren't just fans, they were friends, listening closely to her every lyric, seeing themselves reflected in her music. Taylor loved that connection. It reminded her why she had left the comfort of her home, faced countless rejections, and worked tirelessly for hours on end. One of the most transformative experiences for her was touring with other established country artists. She learned the intricacies of performing live, the importance of stage presence, and how to engage audiences without losing her authenticity. It was exhausting and exhilarating at the same time. Taylor found herself growing, not only as a musician, but also as a young woman learning to navigate the world of professional music. At the same time, Taylor continued to write songs for herself. Her notebooks were never empty. Every heartbreak, every triumph, every quiet observation found its way onto the page. These songs captured the essence of her youth, her vulnerability, and her unwavering determination to be heard. For Taylor, writing was not just a hobby, it was survival. It was how she made sense of the world, and how she prepared herself for the road ahead. Taylor's parents continued to be her anchors. They reminded her to stay grounded, to balance her career with life's simple pleasures, and to never lose sight of who she was outside the studio and the spotlight. Their support was unwavering, even when the path forward seemed uncertain or overwhelming. They knew that their daughter's heart and talent were rare, and they wanted to protect the girl behind the music as much as the artist emerging in front of the world. By now, Taylor was beginning to understand that success wasn't just about talent, it was about resilience, persistence, and authenticity. She learned to celebrate small victories and to keep moving forward, even when doors closed or critics spoke harshly. Every challenge became a lesson, every setback a stepping stone. She realized that the journey mattered as much as the destination, and slowly, the world began to take notice. Taylor Swift wasn't just another young singer. She was a storyteller, a poet, and a voice for anyone who had ever felt misunderstood, overlooked, or alone. The girl with the guitar and the notebooks had become a young artist with a purpose, ready to step into a stage far bigger than she had ever imagined, but still holding tightly to the honesty and heart that made her who she was. Her story before fame wasn't finished yet. Every note she sang, every word she wrote, every small audience she touched, was a building block for the empire she would one day create. And even before the awards, the records, and the global recognition, Taylor Swift had already achieved something remarkable. She had found her voice. At the same time, Taylor continued to write songs for herself. Her notebooks were never empty. Every heartbreak, every triumph, every quiet observation found its way onto the page. These songs captured the essence of her youth, her vulnerability, and her unwavering determination to be heard. For Taylor, writing was not just a hobby, it was survival. It was how she made sense of the world, and how she prepared herself for the road ahead. Taylor's parents continued to be her anchors. They reminded her to stay grounded, to balance her career with life's simple pleasures, and to never lose sight of who she was outside the studio and the spotlight. Their support was unwavering, even when the path forward seemed uncertain or overwhelming. They knew that their daughter's heart and talent were rare, and they wanted to protect the girl behind the music as much as the artist emerging in front of the world. By now, Taylor was beginning to understand that success wasn't just about talent, it was about resilience, persistence, and authenticity. She learned to celebrate small victories and to keep moving forward, even when doors closed or critics spoke harshly. Every challenge became a lesson, every setback a stepping stone. She realized that the journey mattered as much as the destination, and slowly, the world began to take notice. Taylor Swift wasn't just another young singer. She was a storyteller, a poet, and a voice for anyone who had ever felt misunderstood, overlooked, or alone. The girl with the guitar and the notebooks had become a young artist with a purpose, ready to step into a stage far bigger than she had ever imagined, but still holding tightly to the honesty and heart that made her who she was. Her story before fame wasn't finished yet. Every note she sang, every word she wrote, every small audience she touched was a building block for the empire she would one day create. And even before the awards, the records, and the global recognition, Taylor Swift had already achieved something remarkable. She had found her voice. Before the awards, before the sold-out tours, and before the world learned to sing her lyrics by heart, Taylor Swift stood quietly on the edge of something extraordinary without fully knowing how far it would carry her. Her debut album was finally complete. It wasn't just music. It was her teenage years pressed into melodies. Every song carried a memory: long drives with her mother, lonely school days, handwritten lyrics, quiet tears, and brave hope. When the album was released, Taylor didn't wait for praise. She went back on the road. She understood something many didn't. Songs don't live on shelves. They live in people. Taylor visited radio stations across the country, sometimes performing live with nothing but her guitar. She smiled at strangers, shook hands, and thanked every person who listened. Even when only a few showed up, she sang like the room was full. She treated each moment as if it mattered, because it did. Slowly, her name began to travel. Fans talked about her honesty, about how her songs felt like letters written just for them. Teenagers saw themselves in her lyrics. Adults admired her maturity. Taylor listened to every story, every reaction, every feeling her music created. She remembered faces. She remembered names. She never forgot where she came from. But fame, even small fame, brought new pressure. People began watching her closely: how she dressed, how she spoke, how she wrote. Some admired her kindness. Others doubted her talent. A few accused her of being too emotional, too soft, too young. The noise grew louder, and sometimes it followed her into quiet moments. But Taylor stayed grounded. She reminded herself of the girl on the Christmas tree farm. The girl who wrote because she needed to. The girl who sang even when no one clapped. That girl was still there, guitar in hand, heart open. Behind the scenes, Taylor continued to grow. She studied songwriting carefully, learning how melodies could lift words higher and how silence could speak just as loudly as sound. She paid attention to her audience, not to please them, but to understand them. She believed music was a conversation, not a performance. Her work ethic never slowed. Late nights became normal. Long travels became routine. But even when she was exhausted, she wrote. When she was overwhelmed, she wrote. When she was joyful, she wrote. Songs remained her home, no matter where she was in the world. There were moments when doubt crept in. Was she strong enough? Was she good enough? Would this last? In those moments, Taylor looked at her journal pages filled with handwritten lyrics and remembered why she started. Not for applause, not for fame, but for connection. And connection was growing. Crowds became larger. Radios played her songs more often. Her name appeared in places she never expected. But even as her world expanded, Taylor stayed rooted in gratitude. She thanked her parents. She thanked her fans. She thanked the younger version of herself who refused to give up. Just before the world fully discovered her, Taylor stood in a quiet space between who she was and who she was becoming. She wasn't famous yet, but she was ready. Ready to evolve. Ready to be misunderstood. Ready to learn, to grow, and to keep telling the truth through music even when it was uncomfortable. The girl with the guitar had become a young woman with a voice, and soon the world would know her name. But these long nights, small stages, handwritten lyrics, and quiet courage, this was where it all truly began. Not with fame, but with belief.